Good morning. I'm Congressman Adam Schiff, and we want to briefly address the Speaker's decision to remove Mr. Swalwell and myself from the Intelligence Committee, as well as his continuing threat to call a vote to remove Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm joined, of course, by my colleagues Eric Swalwell and Ilhan Omar. Let me just begin, if I can, to make a few observations about the decision on the Intelligence Committee and then hand it off to my colleagues. This decision by Kevin McCarthy to bow to the demands of the most extreme elements of his conference and use the Intelligence Committee as this kind of political plaything doesn't show the strength of his speakership. Indeed, it shows the weakness of his speakership, that he is so beholden to the most extreme elements of his conference. And it bodes, I think, poorly for how he'll conduct the remainder of his speakership for however long or short that may last. But more to the point, by arrogating to himself the decision about who on the Democratic side of the aisle should lead the Intelligence Committee, who should sit on the Intelligence Committee, he will cause the intelligence agencies, I think, to distrust this action, and in combination with the formation of this so-called Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, which ostensibly will have access to classified information, it will only, I think, breed distrust within the intelligence community as to what it can share and what it can feel confident about sharing with the Congress. That will impact policymakers in terms of the information that we have to make decisions about how to protect our national security. So this is, I think, not an unexpected but nonetheless destructive move by Kevin McCarthy that will bode ill in the future for the kind of decisions that he has to make to placate the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Paul Gosars, and of course his boss down in Mar-a-Lago, the disgraced former president. With that, let me turn over to my colleague Eric Swalwell, who I've had the pleasure of serving with on the Intelligence Committee for a great many years, one of our finest members and one of our most vigorous overseers. And indeed, part of McCarthy's motivation here is not just revenge, retaliation, and appeasing the radical elements of his conference. It's also an effort to impair the ability of Democrats to push back against abuses of the majority, and Eric Swalwell has been such an effective advocate on the committee. This is, I think, part and parcel of the motivation as well. Mr. Swalwell.
Thank you, Chairman Schiff. The new McCarthy looks a lot like the old McCarthy. The old McCarthy abused political power to punish and demean and smear his political opponents, and the new McCarthy in Washington today is doing the same. And throughout this journey of vengeance, the three of us have chosen to stick together because this isn't about any individual committee assignment. This is about an institution where the Speaker of the House is using his power to go after his political opponents and to pick them off the field. And that's why we've chosen every step of the way to stick together. In my case, it's purely political vengeance. Speaker McCarthy is choosing to do something that Speaker Boehner, Speaker Ryan, and Speaker Pelosi did not do, which is with access to the same information with the claims that Speaker McCarthy has made about me, Speaker Boehner, Speaker Ryan, and Speaker Pelosi kept me on the committee. Chairman Nunes, with access to the same information to which Mr. McCarthy is making claims about me, never made a peep, allowed me to stay on the committee. The claims that Mr. McCarthy has made about me that I could never get a security clearance, Mr. Schiff was also briefed on and supported me staying on the committee because the FBI said 3 times, all I did was 2 things. I helped them over and over, and I was never suspected of wrongdoing. The Washington Post, in response to Mr. McCarthy's claims, gave him 4 Pinocchios, which is a whopper, the highest amount that they can give for one of the biggest lies that you could tell about somebody else. So this is purely about political vengeance. The cost is not only removing us from the committee. On the Intelligence Committee, the cost is not only shattering the most precious glassware in the cabinet, a committee that's always been bipartisan. The cost are the death threats that Ms. Omar, myself, and Mr. Schiff keep getting because Mr. McCarthy continues to aim and project these smears against us. Even though we have said publicly these smears are bringing death threats, he continues to do it, which makes us believe that there's an intent behind it. But we will not be quiet. We're not going away. I think he'll regret giving all three of us more time on our hands. But at the end of the day, our mission now is to restore the credibility and integrity of this institution of which the Speaker has so gravely smashed and destroyed. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Omar, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the first member of that committee to be born in Africa who could serve on a subcommittee and lead a subcommittee on the Democratic side in a historic way because of her history and her bond to that continent.
Thank you, Chairman Schiff and Representative Swalwell. Our democracy and our governing bodies rest on a healthy and vibrant debate. Our strength lies not in our perfection, but in the diversity of our voices and our openness to civil discourse. That is why, whatever our disagreements might be as members of Congress, policy differences alone have not and must not be cause for eliminating someone from serving on a committee. In modern American history, the punishment of stripping a member of Congress of their committee assignments has been reserved for only the most egregious wrongdoings, those convicted or indicted on corruption, those who have engaged in bribery, sexual misconduct, encouraged violence, or other grave charges. I have served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Education and Labor Committee for the past 2 terms, committees that I have lived experience and expertise in. As a child who survived war, lived in a refugee camp, I would have never imagined that I would one day have the opportunity to serve on a subcommittee on Africa, global health, and global human rights. I would not have believed that I would one day not just serve as the first African-born member of Congress, but on a committee that oversees policies towards the continent. Kevin McCarthy's purely partisan move to strip us from our committee is not only a political stunt, but also a blow to the integrity of our democratic institution and threat to our national security. We are thankful to Leader Jeffries and House Democrats, and even some courageous Republicans, for standing with us. If McCarthy wants to denigrate the integrity of the House and its committees, we will always stand up to these efforts. I am grateful for the confidence of my constituents and my colleagues have shown me to serve on these committees, and I look forward to continuing that work of building a more peaceful world.